Then let me turn to the first of the special symposia that we have for this afternoon. If I can find it in the program here. There we are. Okay, we felt that for an occasion like this, that it would be valuable, important for all of us to tap the insights and experience of some of our most experienced system science leaders. And we have chosen one whose primary experience is in Europe, but who has also been a longtime member of the ISSS, and is in fact will become the president-elect of the ISSS in just a few days, and that's Mike Jackson, who will be the president, the second presenter. And by a flip of the coin, since it was a difficult decision to make, the first presenter will be Len Tronchalli, who is a past president of the ISSS. For 6 years was the managing director of the ISSS, so that he had a lot of responsibility for, among other things, starting the special integration groups, which are now a central feature of the ISSS. He's also the chairperson of the Biological Sciences Department at the California Polytechnic University. He's also the director of the Institute for Advanced Systems Studies and director of the Integrated Science General Education Program. So, and I can speak from experience, he is a very busy man. So I am delighted to introduce Len Tronchalli.
Thank you, Peter. Is this working pretty well? Well, thank you all for coming back from lunch. I know it's hard to do, and I hope you stay awake. I'll try to keep you awake during this talk. The talk's title is The Future of System Science. You notice I changed it to some facets of the future of system science, and that is because obviously it's going to be one person's view. I'm going to go over key developments and growth areas as I see them, and then I'm going to talk about needs and unmet challenges. After that, we're going to go over new resource opportunities. Both 1 and 3 are very dramatically new, I would add. And then just close with the ultimate utility of system science. Before I go on, I wanted to talk about the focus. Mike will focus on systems applications, and I'll focus on systems theories and natural systems or natural sciences. And I also want to mention a caveat. It's presumptuous for anyone to talk about the future unless you're one of the futurists in the audience. There's a number of tech assessment people, and they're allowed to do it. So my apologies, and I wish that you would just give me a break here, and I'll just do the best I can. It's going to be just facets. And I also want to acknowledge my institute and all of its fellows and programmers and students. Items in red in the following slides are projects of the institute, and they'll be put on our websites when my littlest son and I get together to do it. He's always pushing me to get my websites done. He's my little engineer for that. First key development, NPACI, Internet 2, the next generation Internet. The future of very large-scale databases and natural system simulation is really going to be changed forever with the next generation Internet. The Abilene network is complementary to the NSF very fast backbone network system. There's really 2 networks. The one net is 178 connected U.S. universities, industry, and government agencies. The organization behind the net is UCADE, the University Corporation for Advanced Internet Development, and they have a series of very large-scale projects that will promote system science. It's a regional network of aggregation points at gigapop levels, very high speeds, up to 9.6 gigabytes per second. Think of that. You can do a lot with that. This will enable new frontiers of network research. It'll spur the development of new middleware. It'll give us new protocols for parallel and vector supercomputing. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are going to happen as a result of this. And this is a picture of the network. My university is right there. You probably, next to Caltech and all the Southern California, but you can probably see some of your close universities nearby. So there's actually some node right near you in order to capitalize system science all over the United States. NPACI itself means the National Partnership for Advanced Computational Infrastructure, and it's sponsored by the NSF, and they're sponsoring a lot of large-scale systems-type projects with 42 partner institutions. When I talk on the Integrated Science General Education Program in the workshop on Wednesday evening, I think it is, that's one of the NPACI projects, for example. The significance, why should you care? Well, let's see. The functions of UCAID and of NPACI are really almost, they're not designed at all to aid system science, but they're almost entirely going to aid system science, one for one. Every one of the projects is in an application of large-scale science systems. And there's unprecedented levels of collaboration, very large teams, simulation teams working on them. They're going to be using new tools to explore what was formerly unexplorable. I kind of compare them to what happened with chaos theory when advanced PCs came out, then they could see chaos. A lot of things are going to come out from this that we couldn't see before in the natural sciences. For example, they're doing land-air interactions, very complex nature. This is biodiversity index for California mountains, land mass. Look at the amount of data that's in a satellite thing like that over the United States. The amount of data in some of these things is going to be huge, and the scientists are going to need system science, and that's one of my themes, is that very thing. Another key development is in systems biology. As you know, we just are on the verge of sequencing the entire 3.2 billion base pairs of the human genome. That's about 150,000 genes, and each one of those genes does, on the average of 2.5 products from what we've learned from the other organisms, and 30 other complete genomes have been sequenced. We can now sequence 1 million base pairs in approximately an afternoon. A lab technician can do that. 1 million base pairs. Do you know, I tell my students this, you don't know what 1 million means. You use it all the time. You all expect to be millionaires before you retire, right? But you couldn't count up to maybe 7 or 8 million if you counted every second of your life, you lived to be 80, and you started counting in the womb. Calculate it and you'll see. So we have no concept of these numbers and the amount of data that's coming out of these systems. These sequencers operate in such ways that they're producing more data in a day than a scientist can analyze easily in their whole life. And I just blew at something here, I think. My hands are nervous, and this is a keypad that I'm now in an endless loop. And so let me get back on track here. I'm sorry, this is going to take a little time. But it can be done. So, as I was saying, developments of proteomics and bioinformatics are also very dramatic. We have 3,000 protein tertiary structures in the database. That's down to angstrom levels. At our university, in my institute, we're doing fractal analysis of both those kinds of proteins in cancer to look at categories. The bioinformatics industry is growing to be $1 billion industry by 2003. Its annual growth rate is 30%, which is pretty respectable, I'd say. There's also big developments in physiognomics, and they're going to need system science. We said there's about 100,000 protein products, but many of them are mixed multimers. There's more than one protein in the mixed multimer. So each has a number of different states, and many of them has cross-interactions, as I'm going to show. So now in the scientific meetings, you're getting very complex cartoons of the interactions of these proteins with a great deal of cross-regulation between them. In the signal transduction example that was in the Science Journal just recently, which I'll show on the next slide, you'll see the components go up 8 times, but the rate constants, the interactions, go up a much greater number of times. This is the signal transduction pathway cartoon, as they call it, because they don't believe in their models in science. They call them cartoons. I think it's a very good idea. I think systems people should do it too. And this shows that just going up from here to here, you go up 35 times in terms of the number of interactions. So, systems biology, I'm not done with it. There's developments in structural cell biology. For example, a nuclear pore. When I first joined my institution, I told them I was isolating a nuclear pore. They said, how can you do that? That's just a hole in the membrane. Well, I want to show you what the hole in the membrane has become. The hole in the membrane is now this structure here, And it's composed of things in part which are called nucleoporins, and there's probably 32 in a family of nucleoporins. You get the idea? In other words, the whole that we thought was nothing before has turned out to have that kind of complexity, and a great deal many more things will be found in the cell that have that complexity. Developments in the neurosciences are also of interest to system science and moving in that direction of having to become more systems-oriented. For example, at UCLA, they're not only modeling every part of the brain, but they're modeling the histology and the positions of the neurons in the brain, and then they're doing immunocytochemistry, and then in addition to do that, they're doing PET scans on activity of the brain, and all of these are correlated and integrated in one single database. That's when we talk about terabyte databases and managing them, that's what you need. Now these people are going to have to do some system science somewhere along the line, aren't they? There's also developments in modeling and simulation of the cell with this kind of complexity called E-cell or in silico cells, which is moving along very rapidly. I don't have to tell you guys, I'm just putting down here the developments in evolutionary theory as systems theory because many of you have been discussing it in your sessions and will continue to. But the scientific world is now attuned to this. It's not just in your sessions that they're discussing it. There's a whole artificial life conference following ours by a few days on the West Coast. Origin of life is expanding. We're going to start a whole new set of experiments in that at our university, test tube experiments, emergence. Emergence will be to our century what evolution was to the 19th century. In fact, it'll be bigger because the theory of emergence talks about the appearance of new scales, not just new species. So, I mean, that's going to be very big. We already talked about micro-robotics and nanotechnology being used to study cells, but one should remember that systems engineering is exploding in that area also. And they're getting into tinier and tinier complete systems. And then comes the question, well, if you are trying to design all these behaviors into the smallest possible thing, you're going to need a theory of systems engineering that goes beyond just performance specifications for a particular thing. Then there's developments in pharmacogenetics and combinatorial chemistry, where they're actually using the evolutionary hypothesis and some systems concepts to develop new drugs very, very rapidly. So the need for systems theory here is not like in the case of systems biology, where the scientists are going to need the systems develop much better and will come to us hopefully for answers to things. I'm going to ask you in a moment, are you ready for that? But systems theory also needs to meet systems analysis in a way that hadn't happened before. And then of course there's the sciences of complexity, things like the NEXI project. This is due to the widespread availability of very fast computers, gigabyte processors and gigabyte memories. I remember when I got my first portable computer and brought it to Russia for a talk. It was about 50 pounds. They thought it was a bomb, so they wouldn't let me through the German airports on the way there. I was put in quarantine. And the darn thing had a screen this small and it had, I think it was 5 megabytes of memory, and I thought I would never fill that thing. Now I need many gigabytes, as you can imagine. There's going to be software breakthroughs approaching that of mimicking the meme revolution. There's lots of developments in genetic algorithms and artificial life research. A workshop on Saturday, we're going to discuss the formation of the Artificial Systems Research SIG, which will use agent evolution of the type that Holland uses for artificial life, but we'll be doing it for artificial systems research based on the linkage proposition model I'll show you in a minute. So again, there's the blurring of disciplines for true transdisciplinarity, and it's not coming from us. It's coming from the developments in these fields. How did systems biology get there? I have no idea. Very peculiar. Well, anyway, let's go back to systems biology for a moment. There's also multidisciplinary centers at major universities that are coming forward for systems biology, which will have a very strong systems flavor. Look at the numbers here, $50 to $100 million. Look at the institutions, the premier institutions, Harvard, Caltech, Johns Hopkins, right over by my house, just down from the house. Keck gave the Claremont colleges $50 million, not $50, I don't know what. I must have made a typo error there. This isn't being broadcast, is it? There's also developments in ecological modeling and simulation. We think there's 30 million species of 1 billion individuals each on the planet. They're all open systems, far from equilibrium. So concepts of nonlinear dynamics and networks are moving into the ecology field if they haven't been there for a long time already. These 10 examples indicate that as one of the natural sciences, biology is becoming both more aware and more dependent on system science. And again, the question is, are we ready? Now let's go back to the sciences of complexity. What about the development of Earth system science? That's actually recognized disciplines. There's brochures on it. There's dozens of departments that are linked on it. They're researching the Earth as a whole complex system. They're doing vast data gathering. This is just the simplified version of their flow chart for putting all the Earth together. I actually, oh, here we go again. It's this system. And my nervous hands here. But you're very patient, and I still have 10, 20 minutes here, right? That's not what my watch says, but... What's that? Is that same guy back there? My good friend? Well, anyway, let's try that again. That flow chart was the simple one. I couldn't even get the other one scanned. It was too complex. It went to too big a size. Atmospheric patterns, patterns of vegetation, this kind of data that they're collecting, which is global, is very, very data intensive and requires analysis that we don't have ways of doing yet. Development of ecological economics shows the blurring of disciplines again. Both have many aspects of chaos and are using similar tools and patterns. How about physics, astronomy, and cosmology? You wouldn't think of those as being pushed by system science, although Eric Chasen and others have been talking about that for some time. My first paper was actually on that. The third revolution in string theory I want to give to you as a case study of application of a systems principle to solve a fundamental physics problem, although it'll probably turn several string theorists over in their grave. But this actually comes from Brian Greene's new book, a very nice book. I think you all should read it. They had 5 string theories as of the second revolution because of the mathematics. And it was a 13-dimensional type of structure of equations. And they discovered for the third revolution, someone came up with the idea that the unsolvable equations that they couldn't solve, for which they were stuck here at the end of the second revolution, could be resolved by looking at dual opposites of the equations, which could be solved. So they actually went to the complementary equations, solved them there, and then they were able to go back. They came up with the membrane, so-called membrane version, and all the theories were unified. You get the idea? Now, a classical trained scientist would not have thought of duality, but a scientist who had a veneer of system science knowledge might have looked at that right away, right? And that has happened many times in nature. I'll give you the example of Fritz Zwicky at Caltech. He discovered dark matter. He was also the author and user of General Morphology. Those books are out of print, but you ought to read them because they really are systems theory. He was able to predict neutron stars using general morphology, and that shows in a way how system science can aid in hypothesis formation. I'm going to talk about augmented hypotheses in just a moment. So overall, the most exciting and fastest growing science phenomena are going to be systems phenomena, even in the sciences. Let me just get through the key developments. One of the first NSF-sponsored computer conferences was on general systems theory. We now have lots of things on the computer internet. As you know, the ISSS Special Integration Groups, Principia Cybernetica with Cliff Joslin, the NEXI discussion groups are all occurring with physical scientists and philosophers all across the nation participating on the internet to discuss system science. So that's another key development. Now, systems education, I got 4 slides on. They're both key development and need, because it's now happening at all levels. And I've been in this field for 30 years, and I know the significance of this. I'm going to try to develop it for you. It's going to dramatically increase flow-through at all levels. And that's what we need, because we don't have people coming to us asking to do system science. Forrester Systems Dynamics Group is training students in doing systems modeling K through 12. It started at MIT, as you know. It's very tool-based. That's one of its problems and its strengths. It has teams of students who create feedback systems models, all sciences, social sciences, environmental problems. A millionaire has sponsored 10 states and 15 school districts, paying 5 coordinators to do this. They have an annual meeting with as many people as we have here right now, just to our teachers. Lee Hood, this is his quote over here. He was the one who invented that very quick sequencer for DNA. He has $1 million program from NSF to build contents and materials to teach systems versions of biology in Washington. 66 schools are involved, 1,400 teachers, 23,000 students. You get the idea? My integrated science stealth program, which I'm going to discuss Wednesday night at a workshop, is NSF funded. We've gotten 14 grants altogether, $1 million. All 7 sciences are involved. It does the science GE requirements for any non-science major. It takes care of all of those, so it could go to any university. It has 27 built-in learning techniques in the interactive multimedia, and we're trying to disseminate. I've got 5 campuses interested in our 425,000 student CSU system. You get the idea about the numbers that might be coming out of this. The Creative Learning Exchange is web-based clearinghouse for the Stella models that's associated with the Forrester thing. It has literally hundreds of models in it, both paper and the ones that are refereed by the Waters Foundation. So it's a great research for K through 12 students. The NEXI group that Yanir Bar-Yam was talking from this morning is NSF sponsored. It's to coordinate K through 16 systems education. NPACI has a special segment, a committee of it that's doing outreach and training, and it has 17 projects from 2 teams on systems modeling across the nation. You kind of get the idea, I think. The Santa Fe Institute has its summer programs. The ISGE that I'm dealing with is going to try to do a SIS Alliance, and we produce at the CSU system 20,000 new teachers in that last recorded year. So I'm now teaching on our campus most of the liberal studies students. So you can see what the numbers of teachers we're going to turn out, and then there's the multiplier effect where they can actually then go and infect, shall we say, lots of other students. So there'll be an impressive flow of students hungry for systems science in the future. But for systems education to be successful, we need a robust knowledge base, and that gets into the needs. So I'm going to go through the needs rather quickly here. Why should we care about key discriminations like systems theory all the way to application, or the physical to the social sciences, or the various terminologies for transdisciplinary? Well, it's because if we don't describe what the distinctions are, who is? We should be at least clear within our own group. Then we talk about emergence all the time, and my favorite diagram for emergence is a simple one. It's my hands here. There are scalar emergences in nature, where things leap to a new scale that never appeared before in the universe or at that part of the universe. After that happens, they tend to specialize and fragment right away. Now, what we may be looking at when we talk about emergence is all of these different levels here. Now, to try to talk about a process to do from here to here is quite different from the process from here to here. Simple diagram, but a major distinction, which could throw off decades of research. Then there's the dissonyms, where we have lots of words that are different in each discipline, but actually are naming a process which is common across the disciplines. This is a human trait, and we just really have to clarify those things for a lot of people who might be studying system science. Who teaches integration and synthesis? That's another need. It's not taught anywhere in our educational system if you stop and think about it, and we give Nobel Prizes for integration because it's so important, but we don't have a toolbox for integration. If I asked you to give me 10 tools for doing integration, or tell me where they're taught, I think many of you would be hard-pressed to do that. But systems science is a great augmenter of hypothesis formation. In other words, like I showed in the case for string theory, knowing systems processes can give you an insight into what might be a useful hypothesis to form. And Dimidium Scientia Quaestio Prudens, half of science is asking the right question. Integration of institutions is as critical as the synthesis of ideas. And look, we have all these different societies. I just came from Forrester Systems Dynamics Society, 300 people. NEXI, 300 people. ISSS, and you did a great job of getting people together. You not only write about synergy, Peter, but you do synergy. Isn't that great? Maybe I got another minute now. But there's problems to alliance and confederation. We should confront them and find out why our egos are keeping us separate rather than bringing us together. There's also this role of the wandering lone wolf. If I go to all these meetings and a couple of you go to all these meetings, if we had 10,000 years, it would be like the human genome. It would cause enough spread of the genes. But I don't think we have 10,000 years. And now I don't want to get into this one very much, but Miller, Odom, and Cohen have all called for parameterizations for many years, but many of our discussions are still too philosophical, are not grounded in some kind of parameterization. And we're not going to be able to select between theories unless we get some parameterization. Saturday workshop, the one coming up, is going to be exactly on that. And I don't think all of us could describe an internal methodology or a consensual set of criteria to even compare candidate systems theories. We should at least have, by now, come up with a set of criteria you ask of every systems theory and agree there are potent things to discriminate between systems theory. I can't point to one, can you? Maybe I've just been asleep all this while. Okay, I wish I could just leap ahead. I've got 7 minutes on my watch, but 5 on yours. What? The tough question is that one I just grayed out. What is the value added? If these scientists come to us with all this data now, and they say, what can you give us? First of all, the question will be, what can you give us that you all agree on? By the way, we're dead in the water. And then, what's the value added of what you agree on? Demonstrate to me that this is good stuff. We got to have robust transfers. They're actually using the metabolic network tools for mapping networks in the Silicon Valley of social interactions. It's very, very nice kinds of transfers, but are they robust? And I'm going to skip the other stuff here because it's too philosophical. Now, this is the way I do it. I describe 82 systems processes at our institute. They form a self-organizing, mutually reinforcing set. They're very specific, and they're very traceable. Only actual demonstrated processes are allowed. And for each one of those isomorphies, we're building a database of all of this stuff. Examples and exemplar identifying features and functions, current consensus knowledge, role in systems pathology, linkage propositions, those sorts of things. And then what I do, or what my team does, is try to build linkage propositions. I've been doing this for many years, and the linkage propositions are actual specific interactions. All of these are isomorphies grouped, and this is a picture of some of the isomorphies, maybe 3 of them, and their linkage propositions. What you get is a true system of systems concepts which is really detailed, and that's what you need for the future, is a system of systems processes, and then you need to be able to have tools to get into it, because if these are all the connections, how are you going to be able to use that wealth of information without having it overwhelm you? Like Humberto was saying earlier, you have to have the understanding also. To have this detail might have value added, but if you end up with something that's too detailed, you're going to end up missing the boat. And at Saturday workshop, I'm going to show how a lot of these isomorphies can be grouped into what I call the general systems life cycle, something that's very common to lots of systems. And so, now I'm at the part 3, I'm getting pretty good. Oh, well. Funding programs I can't resist, but there's a new director of NSF. They're emphasizing biocomplexity. NIH, because the biomedical aspects of disease, and especially the autoimmune diseases that are polygenetic, I think that I know that there are several $100 million programs out there for people to try to get stuff from. Even ONR is doing stuff in nanotechnology. Then private foundations like the Waters Foundation, Hood has asked $100 million to the Gates Foundation for his systems biology. Obviously, this is the first time in my life that NSF is well funded. Now, I can't go into these. I'm just going to show the pictures. Systems allometry is like Chasen I've been doing this for about 15 years now, is taking the actual data from the sciences and showing that there's patterns in the data which we've never encountered before, that go through all the scales of data from physical to biological systems. And when you look at these, you can begin to see that there's actually gaps that are very regular, and those gaps are the parameterization of emergent level leaps, the biggest ones in nature. If you can get a a model that explains those, a process that explains that you have a parameter basis for doing a theory of emergence that might be respected. Now I'm going to go to the last slide. Okay. and this is my conclusion, it goes way off the scale now. The one before this was on ethics and systems pathology, but I have to skip that because of time. But what is the ultimate utility of system science? I say it's going to be the hallmark of the 21st century. If all of these sciences are doing this at the beginning of the century, obviously it's going to be the hallmark. It's critical to the success of the other science that we're doing. But also, Homo sapiens in this millennium, certainly, probably this century, is going to become a spacefaring species. And we know now that there's planets for the first time because there's been 24 cases discovered. And we will colonize a local galaxy at an exponential spread. Now, when we do this, we're going to be seeing ecologies and places that are unimaginable to us right now, because we'll spread very, very quickly. And in these places that we go, we won't have the time to try to figure out the organisms by slow reduction research. We're going to need augmented hypotheses from system science, not only to just understand our species, but to quickly, in many different places, begin to understand other places. Because no matter where we go in the universe, system science is probably going to be the same. At least that's my contention. And that, my friends, is the future of system science. Thank you.